You're watching Gearz, brought to you by Ram Truck.
You know, one of the coolest things about doing a show like Gearz is the fact that we get to cover all aspects of the gearhead world, from cars and trucks to off-road vehicles to military vehicles to airplanes to things that don't even have a category. But there is one vehicle that we haven't featured yet, the utility vehicle, the SUT, the side-by-side. Something like this Polaris Ranger. Now, the idea behind the side-by-side was to offer a utility vehicle that could be used by hunters and fishermen and outdoorsmen and ranchers and farmers, pretty much anybody. That's why most are available with full tops and doors and even dump beds right from the factory. But enthusiasts wanted more than that. So people like Polaris offered bigger engines and better suspensions every year, resulting in a really nice vehicle. But it can be so much more than that. And that's why there's a huge aftermarket out there to help you turn your side-by-side into an incredible off-road vehicle. And that's what we're going to show you how to do. The first thing we're going to deal with is suspension. So we went to the guys at Racer Tech, got one of their 3-inch suspensions for the Ranger. Now check this out. You got heavy-duty upper and lower control arms for the front, big heim joints for ball joints. Then for the rear, you have upper and lower control arms too. Now notice this is heavy-duty square tubing, much stronger than what originally came on that Ranger. The kit also comes with longer stainless steel brake hoses, so we have plenty of slack during suspension travel. Now, this system is not only going to raise the vehicle 3 inches, it's going to widen the track width 3 inches on each side and extend the wheelbase 2 inches in the front. It's going to make a much stabler vehicle, better response, and the best part is, this is bolt-on stuff that you can do in your garage. Here's how it goes in. With the rig up in the air and the wheels off, remove the brake caliper and the hubs. Then follow that by unbolting the control arms and removing the axles. Now, this ought to give you an idea of the difference between the stock pieces and what we're putting on. Check this out. Notice the stuff from Racer Tech is much bigger, more heavy duty, tougher. But even though they're bigger, they're going to fit right in the stock location of these stock pieces. So we're going to reuse all the bushings and all the hardware. The new tie rod ends also bolt right in place of the stock ends. And as you can see, just like everything else with this kit, they are much longer and stronger than these original pieces. Now, obviously, having stronger axles is always a good thing, especially if you're going to add bigger tires or more power to your ATV. So, we went to Gorilla Axle and got their heavy-duty axle upgrades for the Polaris Ranger. Now, these feature super strong chrome moly axle shafts and heavy-duty CV joints, because CV joints is where you're going to get most of your breakage. Now, these are superior because Gorilla uses their own patented cage design, which is far stronger than stock. These things will take a serious beating and just keep on going. If you are going to use your ATV hard, especially if you're putting bigger tires on, putting on bigger axles is one of the smartest things you can do, because you don't want to be breaking an axle in the middle of nowhere. Once all your new A-arms are in place, you're ready to install the new Gorilla axles, put on your brake hoses, and then just reassemble everything. And that will take care of the front. Now, the rear is similar to the front, but with no steering to mess with, it's even easier to put on. All you do is unbolt all the stock control arms, and put the new stuff on. Hey, welcome back to Gearz and the Lone Ranger project. Now, ATVs have changed a lot over the years, from three-wheelers to four-wheelers to the current side-by-sides that we have now, like this Polaris Ranger. And what you can do to them has changed a lot too. For example, we've already put on a 3-inch suspension lift and stronger axles just like you would a Jeep. And since that gives us more room here, we are not going to reuse those old wheels and tires because they're just not big enough. So we went to Colorado Components and got a set of these cool aluminum MSA wheels that have just enough flash to make them really pop. Then we wrapped them with this gnarly EFX Moto rubber, size 26 by 10 in the front, 26 by 12 in the rear. These suckers are going to do some serious digging in the mud and the dirt. Now, when most people think of an ATV like this, they think about doing some hunting or fishing or some hardcore off-roading with it, which means there is definitely a chance of getting something like this stuck, even with the bigger wheels and tires. So we're going to add winches front and rear to make sure that doesn't happen. Now, obviously a front winch is pretty self-explanatory. We've got the bigger bumper on from Racer Tack. It's got the opening for the winch. All you do is bolt it on and wire it up. The rear, however, is a little different. Check it out. A rear-mounted winch on a side-by-side can be one of the most useful tools that you can have. So, Skyjacker came out with this special mounting bracket that fits right up here between your frame rails and gives you a nice solid mounting place for a winch. The supplied hardware makes mounting the bracket really simple, and only 2 extra holes need to be drilled. Now we are ready for our winches, and for those, we went to Super Winch, got a couple of these Terra 35s. Now this is a 3,500 pound winch, and it's specifically designed for ATVs, quads, and side-by-sides. It comes with all the hardware you're going to need to hook it up and make it work. Now the cool thing about these winches, they come with a remote so you can control the winch outside the vehicle, and an internal mount that goes to the roll bar, the handlebars, or the dash, and allows you to control the winch from the driver's seat. It's a great option to have when you're running a winch. All right, now all we got to do is bolt it in place, hook up the wiring. Now, since a lot of the people that use these things are hunters or outdoorsmen, having a place to safely carry a gun or a bow is pretty important when you're bouncing around off-road or in the swamps. So, Skyjacker has come out with this gun and utility rack so you have a place to keep your stuff till you're ready to use it. Check it out. A floor plate bolts in place using existing hardware so there's no drilling. And then the rack bar connects to the lower plate and to the rear roll bar. So now you have a place to mount a gun, a bow, an axe, whatever you want to carry. And when you're hunting, especially in the South, you never know which one of these tools is going to be more popular. Now, one of the first questions that people ask when they get a side-by-side is, how do I get more performance out of the engine? And it may surprise you to find that E3 got their start with smaller engines. And they do a tremendous amount of testing on snowmobiles, motorcycles, lawnmowers, and putting in a set of these is a great way to get peak performance out of one of these things. But other than putting in a set of spark plugs and a better air filter, is there any way to get serious horsepower out of one of these? Yeah, there is. Come on, I got something to show you. This is the ATI Pro Charger for the Polaris Ranger. Yeah, you heard me right. A blower for a side-by-side. Now check this out. This is a complete kit. You got the little supercharger, you got the bracketry to mount it to the engine, you've got the intercooler, you got the cooling system, you've got the fuel system, everything that you're gonna need to turn your Lone Ranger into a blown Ranger. And if you think they're fast from the factory, wait till you drive one with a supercharger. But You're going to have to wait to see that because we are out of time on this project today. But hopefully this gives you an idea of the incredible potential of this kind of vehicle.
And now, Paint Tech, brought to you by PPG Industries, bringing innovation to the surface.
When it comes to painting, one of the most important things to know how to use correctly is masking tape. Now, I know some of you guys are thinking, masking tape? What's there to know about masking tape? Plenty. Check it out. After laying down a piece of tape, make sure you go back and press it down tight to the surface, paying special attention to the edges, the corners, or any uneven surfaces. This will keep the paint from blowing underneath and creating a mess for you to clean up later on. Never leave the tape on a job for more than a few days, especially if it's going to sit out in direct sunlight. The tape will dry out and it'll be a pain to remove. If the tape gets wet from wet sanding or sitting outside, remove the tape as soon as possible, or it'll harden and be almost impossible to get off. Make sure you allow the paint to dry properly before removing any tape, or you'll leave jagged edges. And always pull it back against itself to keep from pulling paint up below it. Always use a high-quality tape and don't use newspapers to mask with. Not only is it porous and the paint can bleed through it, but the black ink can also bleed onto the vehicle. And finally, if your tape has gotten old and hard from just sitting around, don't just throw it away. Just stick it in the microwave for about 15 seconds and it'll be nice and soft and sticky.
And now, Tool Tech.
If you work a lot with metal, I'm sure there's a lot of tools that you'd like to have. But there is one tool that you should have, an iron worker. Because it allows you to punch, cut, and notch metal in just a few seconds. And this is one area where it's important to buy a quality tool.
The offshore stuff is just cheaper built. It may wear out in one day, it may wear out in 1 week. The thing with our stuff, it's very heavy duty. It's going to last you a lot of years.
Based on that fact, it was a natural step for Edwards Manufacturing to come out with their hydraulic accessory pack that allows you to run a tubing bender and a press off of the same iron worker. But that doesn't mean that they've stopped developing their iron worker and trying to make it better. For example, this is the new Elite Series 110, and the first thing that grabs you about this machine is the way it looks. I mean, it's got this cool Art Deco kind of vibe to it. But an iron worker is not judged by the way it looks. It's judged by performance. And this thing has got a lot of features. Check it out. An integrated hydraulic hold down keeps your metal in place when you're cutting it, whether it's flat or angled. And internal LED lighting will make sure that you have a clear view of what's going on inside the machine. You have a digital measuring system to make sure your pieces are all cut to the proper length. And a notcher and punch areas to round out the versatility of the machine. For power, the 10 horsepower motor and 110-ton capacity will handle pretty much anything you can throw at it with no problem, even heavy steel like this truck frame. But if something like the 110 is too big for you or out of your price range, well, Edwards has smaller iron workers and equipment that will fit your shop and your budget. And if you ever go to get rid of some of this stuff, you're not going to have any problem there either.
I've seen guys that have bought in the early 80s to the early 90s, and they've turned their machine around for the same price they paid for it back then.
And that makes this not only a great tool to have, but also a wise investment.
And now, parts bin.
You know, sometimes the simplest tasks are the most annoying, like opening boxes. So we grab them, we try to tear the tape with our hands. That doesn't work. You pull out your trusty pocket knife, try to cut the tape. That dulls the knife. That doesn't work. Then you pull out the box cutter, extend that blade, start cutting, usually cut your leg. That doesn't work. Then you pull out the trusty Ginsu knife, start sawing away. That doesn't work. A simple solution to this is this thing called the Clever Cutter from Clever Innovations. That's a plastic handle with a razor blade in the end and a little tip on either side. And that little tip protects your skin or your clothes from getting cut, and it keeps the cutter from going too deep into the cardboard when you're cutting the box or the tape. And since these things are cheap and disposable, once they start to get dull, you just chuck it away and grab yourself another one. Now, the Clever Cutter may not be as cool as that, but it does work better. You know, the benefits of fuel injection are well documented. Better starts, better performance, better fuel economy. But in spite of that, a lot of people are nervous about putting an aftermarket fuel injection on their project because they've heard horror stories about what it takes to make one run. Well, MSD came out with a solution to that with what they call the Atomic EFI. Now check this out. This is a throttle body injection unit, but if you look close, you can see that the fuel rails are built right into the body. The 4 injectors are tucked in the front and the rear, and the ECU and all the sensors are tucked right here into the side, so you don't even have to mess with them. Then you have an electric fuel pump, a power module, a tuner, and of course hoses and a filter. Now basically what you do is you get rid of your old nasty carburetor, you bolt this unit on, then make a few hookups, punch a few buttons to tune it, and you are ready to roll. If you've got a muscle car or an off-roader that's begging for fuel injection, feed it with an Atomic EFI from MSD. It's a fact that every once in a while you are going to encounter some buggered up threads. And sometimes you got to fix them. You can't just throw them away. Prime example is a stud like this. Now the problem with the typical tap and die is a lot of times the damage is on the end of the bolt. So when you try to put the die on there, you end up cross-threading it. Well, Murray Tools has got a solution for that with this master rethreading kit. Now check this out. They got high quality dies that are split and held in place with a spring. Now what this does is allow you to go to the back side of the damage, put the die in place, then put a socket on there and remove the die. When you do that, you fix the threads. Something like this will save you a ton of time and aggravation and pay for itself the first few times you use it. Matter of fact, the biggest problem you're going to have with this is all your buddies are going to want to borrow it. And you can thank Murray Tools for that.
And now, what are you working on?
Today's What Are You Working On comes from John Bradshaw from Hanson, Massachusetts. And John says that he always wanted to build an old-school, fuel-altered streetcar. But the project didn't get started until his wife, Debbie, bought him a body for Christmas. John went out and immediately started building him a tube chassis. Check it out. He fabricated all the pieces, welded them together. As you can see, he even used an old railroad sign as a firewall. Then, of course, he finished it off with a drop front axle and a shortened rear end in the back with big old meats on it. The next step was the engine. And that was a 355 Chevy. Check this out. Old school all the way, tunnel ram, 2.4s, big headers, and it's backed up by a Chevy 400 turbo transmission. Now, while John was doing all this mechanical work, his buddy Chuck was handling the paint. Now check this out. Once again, all old school, green and gold metal flake. And then when that was finished, his wife Debbie did all the upholstery work. Once again, all old school cool. And when it was all finished, this is what rolled out. Man, is that cool or what? Now, John says that he had a blast building this hot rod. Matter of fact, he says when he goes to all the shows, all the local kids want to have their picture taken in the car. Check it out. Now, John, I got to tell you, unless that's your wife, Debbie, that's not a kid in the car. Now, he says that his grandkids love to take spins in this car. As you can see by this picture, you had one that really enjoyed it, but my favorite shot is this one. Look at this picture. Look at this girl close. She looks scared to death. And John's like, what? I didn't do anything. Yeah, right, John. The pictures do not lie. But I'll tell you what, Those grandkids will never forget you in that car. You're making gearheads out of them, and that's awesome. So, since you say that the motivation for that project came from watching this show, we're gonna send you a whole bunch of gear stuff. Videos, shirts, stickers, hats, to be shared with you and those grandkids. Now, the rest of you guys, if you want to get your project featured on the show, you got to send it in to What Are You Working On? We'll do our best to get it on the air. Also, don't forget to like us on Facebook, check us out on Twitter so you can see all the other stuff that's going on. Now, there's no reason to let John have all the fun. You need to get out there and build something. We'll see you next time.